I don't think it's avoidable in entrepreneurship not to feel overwhelmed. I always say that entrepreneurship is one of the greatest paths of self-development. It pushes you to the brink, and that's what this business really did.
The following is brought to you by Thryv.
Hey, this is Gordon Henry at Winning on Main Street, and this week we're lucky to have an outstanding guest, Joe Pergolizzi. Welcome to the show, Joseph.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks, Gordon.
So, quick intro on Joe. Joe Pergolizzi is an entrepreneur for over 25 years, founded 3 businesses, all bootstrapped, and exited each of them. He's had a brick and mortar business, e-commerce, and built a food franchise to 400 franchises across 5 countries. He's helped over 1,000 entrepreneurs start, scale, exit, and buy businesses. You can find Joe on joeperg.com. That's joeperg.com. And also additional info on Joe on websiteclosers.com. What should listeners get out of this episode? Joe's a serial entrepreneur. He can give you great insights on launching, scaling, and selling your startup or buying a business if that's what you're seeking. Definitely worth a listen. So Joe, welcome to the show. Let's just start off. Tell us your story. How did you become such a successful entrepreneur?
Well, for one, you need somebody to believe in you. I think you need a mentor. You need somebody who inspires you to think bigger. And that's what I had as a young kid. My parents really gave me an opportunity. You know, they lent me, I think it was $10,000 back in 1994. And I had a mentor at the time say to me, ignorance is a blessing to the youth. And I'll never forget that. Like, that gave me permission to try. And fortunately, I think my first business was a success. So that gave me an air of confidence. And I know some people don't have success with their first business, but you know, my trajectory was my parents helped me a little bit. And then from day one, opening my business was a success. And that really inspired me to keep it going. That was, I think, the springboard, and that set me up for the rest of my career. I don't know if I was lucky or if I had an inflated sense of confidence or there was some kind of innate talent here, but it was something like that. One of those.
So tell us about the 3 businesses you started. As I understand, you bootstrapped and exited 3 businesses. That's pretty impressive. You don't look that old. So tell us about those 3 businesses you bootstrapped and exited.
Yeah, sure. The first one was in New York City, and it was right at the time where the action sports industry was really starting to hockey stick. And I had a hobby at the time, you know, that was my genre, counterculture, New York City. And I opened it up with, again, like $10,000. And my first month in business, I did $30,000. So it was an immediate success. Snowboarding, skateboarding was, again, like really taking off. So the timing was there.
So it's a brick and mortar business, and you're selling snowboards and skateboards?
Correct.
In New York City?
In New York City.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was really wonderful. One of the big things that I think drove the momentum of the business is it had a sense of a community. And in, I think, Marty Neumeier's book, Zag, he talks about building a tribe, and a tribe can really help really aid in a business's success. And that's what I had. I had a community of kids, community of young adults. And after selling snowboards for 4 years, I wanted to go and snowboard. And there was a large chain going on, buying all the businesses. And one thing led to another. I think I picked up the phone, or they picked up the phone. And it took about, interestingly enough, it took about a year to do the deal. I was ready, and I did a little bit of a transition, and then I picked my bags up and I downshifted. It was difficult. That first business was difficult because all my friends didn't have the level of responsibility that I had. And that's really just to say that I was under a lot of, I was on a steep learning curve of maturity at the ripe old age of 21 years old. So yeah, I downshifted, and then which was great. I had a lot of money in the bank for a young kid, and fortunately I didn't spend it all. I kept some of it. And I hunted. I did a bunch of other things. I worked in marketing, I worked in education, but that initial experience, I think when you're an entrepreneur, you develop this sixth sense of looking at the world almost as opportunity, looking at the world as what needs are there, looking at unique experiences, looking at things that provide value that are underserved or underdelivered, I should say. And this entrepreneurial instinct never shuts off. And lo and behold, my second business was inspired through an experience while working on a farm. And I was downshifted. I was just living life. I was working on a farm, and we had a cob oven on the farm, and it was starting to deteriorate. And the master gardener was like, "Yeah, I want to rebuild the pizza or the wood-fired oven out of fire brick." And I had never done anything like that before, but I was like, "I'll give it a shot." And I said, "Yeah, Gunter, I could build it." And he said, "Sure, go build it." And that was not the answer I was expecting him to say. So I ended up figuring out how to build this beautiful wood-fired oven made out of brick. And I would host pizza parties at night. We would go into the garden, bring the food, and toss the pizza and drink wine. And one night I remember looking out at a dozen friends or so gathered around the fire, and I was just staring at everybody going, "This is such an experience. How do I take this and bring this to other people?" And this is 2003, so this is really early in the artisanal resurgence of cooking. And so I came up with this idea to put one of these ovens on a trailer. And then a picture got put on the internet by somebody I didn't even know. And then my phone started ringing, and people wanted to know all about wood-fired pizza and wanted pizza ovens. And so I ended up forming this white label franchise that really enabled people to put their own signature, their own brand onto something. I guess that's just part of my own DNA is individualism versus, here's your Sbarro. I mean, interestingly enough, I taught one of the Sbarros how to make pizza, but that's an aside. Great guy too. So anyway, I formed this, I created this white label franchise. It was a turnkey business model for people who wanted to either do restaurants or mobile food catering, which was extremely, emerging at the time. It was very new. And, I didn't know what I didn't know. I ended up with a manufacturing business. I ended up with a cooking school, a sales agency, consulting. I wrote a book. We held seminars. And I don't think it's, Gordon, I don't think it's avoidable in entrepreneurship not to feel overwhelmed. I just think it's a mandatory step in improvement. I always say that entrepreneurship is one of the greatest paths of self-development. It pushes you to the brink, and that's what this business really did. I never used a CRM before. I didn't even know what a Gantt chart was, and employees, and it was just these incremental steps of building that business that taught me a lot. And my mentor at the time, Ira Knotson, who wrote the book, Buying and Selling a Business for Entrepreneur, him and I were in my kitchen one day, and I was just telling him, I'm like, Ira, I built this great business. I'm this big CEO, and it's all a farce. I don't want anything to do with it. It's a bad bill of sales trying to be a CEO. It's too much pressure. I want out. And he just smiled and he shook his head. And at that point in time, I knew I had reached my limit. It was about 7 or 8 years of building that business. And on the tail end of building that business, I got to work with Steve Jobs and his executive team. And I did some projects for them over at the Apple HQ. And so that was, I think, a pinnacle moment in my career that really solidified what entrepreneurship really is, because I had worked with first-time entrepreneurs who were taking second mortgages on their home in the 2008 crisis. And here I am, designing something, working with Steve Jobs and being involved in that, deep embedded in that culture of seeing, how they all are so meticulous and at the same time, just dispelling all these grandioso projections I had about business. Oh, it has to look this way. If you're not raising money or not wearing a suit, or if you're not talking about your, whatever your valuation, you haven't hit big time.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not my experience. My experience has been always like more of the heart, more of the thoughtfulness, more of the service, more of wonder, more of curiosity. Those have been the cornerstones of pushing business forward for me. And I even saw it at Apple, the biggest company in the world. So I was fortunate to sell that company. And again, I took some time off. I didn't eat pizza for over a year. I was done. And then I started to dabble in real estate, and that proved to be successful. And then I got interested in Amazon in 2016, and took a bunch of courses, read a bunch, and started a leather goods company. And after a few years of running that, I realized that I did not want to constantly have to interact with an algorithm, because with Amazon, you're, sure, you have a customer, you have to deliver something to your customer, but you're always chasing how to optimize your listing for traffic.
Right.
And so I spent a bunch of time learning that ecosystem, getting involved with e-commerce, and then I sold that business too. So
okay, so let's get into what you're doing now and how you're helping people now. So you've accomplished these 3 successful exits, some terrific business learning, but now you're into helping others do what you did, basically. So tell us about your consulting business. Let's start with, let's say I'm a guy and I just have a dream for a new business, like you were at one point. Do you work with guys like that, or gals, who were just, guy in a dream? How does that work? What does it cost? Tell us about that piece.
Yeah, sure. I do work with first-time entrepreneurs. I work with seasoned entrepreneurs in consulting. If somebody wanted start a business, I have a lot of friends that come to me, wanting to start a side business, or even clients of mine. It's a retainer. So depending on the scale of the business, could be $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 a month, depending on how big the project is. And my gift is to put things in really practical terms, because I've been there. I know it so well that I can chunk things down and break things down into simple terms. I was mentioning earlier, there's this air of being an entrepreneur that can seem so almost like a glass ceiling for people. And that's one of the first, if this is someone's first business, that's one of the first things I tell them is like, hey, this is it. Like, we're doing it. You're not going to one day arrive. You've already arrived. So again, like depending on what the business needs, how long it's been established for, whether it's organization, thinking about delegation, which is always a big challenge for entrepreneurs, is when to delegate, how to delegate, product strategy. You know, how are we looking at your catalog, or how are we looking at your services? What's your competitive advantage? You know, these conversations at first that I have with my clients are very organic, and then they start to take shape, and we start to create a roadmap. And once the roadmap has been sketched, penciled, designed, what have you, then it kicks into sort of a second gear, which is, okay, how do we manage? How do we continue to evolve this plan? How are you personally managing your work? A lot of times, you know, that gets tossed under the rug, which is, you know, you could have the best system in the world, but if you're not functioning, if you're not sleeping, if you're not eating, your business is going to crumble. If you're not and you know what, Gordon, I'll go here, but you know, if you're not a good person, what makes you think like you're going to be able to hire employees? How happy are they going to be? How happy are your customers going to be if you're a jerk?
Right.
I don't know.
There's a little psychology involved here as well.
Absolutely.
So that's on the get your business started side. Now there's another piece. I want to kind of touch on briefly all the things I think you do. Funding. So I'm a guy or a gal who has a business. Maybe I'm in business. I want to expand the business. I want to grow. I need money. Part of what you do is make funding available, right?
Yeah. So two things. One is, in my experience, there's lots of ways to generate capital depending on the stage of the business. You know, there's friends and family rounds, there's seed rounds. Then you get into multiple rounds, you know, your A, B, C rounds. So if you're a budding entrepreneur, you have options in terms of where you can get money. And there's even, you know, nowadays there's crowdfunding, which is a whole other strategy. It's an incredible strategy, actually, on Kickstarter and stuff like that. A lot of smart businesses launch on there to raise money. On the professional side, and the professional services, what I do today, I'm always looking at deals, you know, not only just in a transactional M&A space, but for people to raise capital. And, you know, that's a process, right? Like there's some businesses that have a great idea, but the founder might not be capable of executing. And then there's also vice versa. You have a great founder and a mediocre idea. And so when I'm working with a client, a private client, to help them raise money, that's one of the first things I'm trying to think about is, what's the strong suit here? Which one's stronger? You know, the research says the more attractive component to a deal for an investor is the founder, or are the founders.
Because the business you always have to pivot, right? No idea is always the same from the beginning to the end. And so you're really betting on the team or the founder, you know, because you're buying into that ability to adjust as the business needs change.
Absolutely. And Gordon, on that note, part of, let's just call them, you know, the CEO, the founder, part of one of the ways they're being assessed is their ability to communicate and their ability to sell themselves.
Yeah, sure.
And that is so, I think, under the radar on really charisma and knowing how to be coachable, but also being confident. And when I work with a company that's eventually wanting to raise money and they're working on their deck, I'll spend 2 months with somebody working on their deck, working on their pitch, so that they can sound competent, confident, but again, that open, flexible mind. And also, again, psychology is a huge thing, because not one size does not fit all with an investor. And some investors are so, focused on their own lane.
Sure.
Some investors could be very controlling. Some investors can give you the lowest valuation. However, they offer you the most amount of resources.
Right.
And I get really dense with my clients, in the sense that we're tapering the pitches to who the VC is or the PE is.
Know your audience. Yeah, for sure.
You got to know your audience. You have to.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So now I want to get into exits. I'm a founder who's I've had success. I'm looking to sell the business, but I don't know how. Or I have an idea, but I'm not an expert. I know you help with that as well, and obviously you've done it a bunch of times. How do you take me through an exit?
Yeah, great question. The first phase is sort of cleaning house. So, depending on your business, do you have SOPs in place? Do you have your contracts in place with your suppliers? And do you have, what's your supply chain like? What's your product development pipeline look like? How competent is your staff? What's going to happen when you hand the keys off? Is the person going to be able to drive the car off the lot, or the wheel's going to fall off?
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest things that we start with is financials. And this is why it's never too early to start planning for your exit, because I want to look at your books. I want to make sure that your books are not just set up for your accountant, not just set up for the way you like to look at them, but for the way a buyer's going to want to look at them. What is the most comprehensive, universal way we can present your financials that are going to make the most amount of sense? I had a deal break last week because there was a $1 million discrepancy between what the buyer was seeing and what the seller was showing. And there was lack of confidence in the numbers. Lack of confidence in the numbers just stops a deal. So I will, like I said, clean house with you. Could take a month, could take a year, whatever the desired exit's going to be. And then once we're at that point, we'll develop all the marketing materials. And a broker, in my case, I do all the heavy lifting. I'm communicating, so you have everything that you want to know. You know what's going on, but you can run your business.
You are just for the record here, you are a business broker, right? That's kind of your handle on your business card, right? Or at least one of them.
Yeah.
So you'll help people sell, and as you said, they just like you would help somebody sell a house, and they're busy running their business. Now, what about the other side? While we're at this,
Sure.
You also help people buy businesses. In fact, that may be your biggest thing, right? That when I go to your website, or at least the website closers.com site where you appear, you have listings of businesses, just like people can find listings of houses to buy. So if I'm somebody who maybe I have some money or I got some backing and I'm looking to buy a business, I come to you. What is that process like? That seems so intriguing to me, that people come out of the woodwork and just say, and they may not necessarily have experience in this area, like, oh, I want to buy a restaurant, or I want to buy a service business that cleans homes or something. And I may have no background in that, right?
Yeah. The hunt for opportunity. So that's the other side of the coin. And I love that part. So depending on, is this a first-time entrepreneur? Is this, again, like a PE firm? PE firms, private equity firms or family offices or serial entrepreneurs, they typically know exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And so then it's just a matter of, okay, is this a build or buy situation for you? So it's a buy. Is this a bolt-on to an existing business? Are you trying to target the same client, but just in a different marketplace? Or are you trying to, increase your healthcare line or, supplement line, whatever. So PE firms, serial entrepreneurs, they typically have their mandate. They know what they're looking for. And that takes some time to find the right listing. I'm always in touch with, my short list of buyers who are qualified, who I know and trust that they're, worth the time, because that's a big deal for brokers. There's so many buyers kicking tires.
Yeah, you gotta be
It's
sure.
a total waste of, well, I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but
Yeah,
you have to know where to invest your time. And then for the first time entrepreneur, that's a little bit more of a delicate process, understanding people's risk tolerance, understanding their capabilities. I mean, at the end of the day, if someone wants to buy a business, I'm going to sell them that business, but I certainly am involved or trying to advise on, hey, this might be a better business opportunity for you versus this other opportunity over
right.
there.
What size businesses are you typically buying and selling or brokering? Are they, 10 million, 20 million? What size business?
I'm actually across the range. I have like a $500,000 listing all the way up to a $90 million listing right now. And it some days, like the $500,000 business might be worth more than a $20 million business. I don't, it price really, at the end of the day, price has very little to do with the job. It's really about analyzing the bones of the business, finding the fit, making sure that it's going to close. No one wants to waste their time. I've been working on a deal for 2 years, and it might break today. So it is, fortunately, it's a successful business, so it will sell. But it's still, a business is still subjected to all the same critiques or assessments.
So what does it cost to work with you from a business broker standpoint? I mean, I guess many of us, bought or sold a house. So you have some idea of what a house broker costs. What does a business broker cost to work with?
Yeah, just like in the real estate market, there could be tiers. So depending on the value of the house, a standard commission could be 6% for, I guess, properties under $1 million, and then it goes to 4% or 3%. So it's the same sort of tiered structure in the brokerage world. Typically, deals that I execute that are under 5 million are a 10% commission, and then it goes down from there on up. I'd say on excuse me, on the low end, depending on, again, like the price, our commissions could be as low as 3%. And yeah, there's a matrix involved. I don't know, Gordon, how deep you want to get into it, but because there could be certain percentages for cash, there could be certain percentages for equity, because not every deal that gets done, obviously, is for all cash. So there could be a blended rate. So when I say 10%, a blended rate could end up being 6 or 7 or something like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And how many deals are you handling at any one time? You seem like an extremely busy guy. Like, how many balls do you have in the air at any given time?
Yeah. If I tally up my buy side deals that I'm working on and my sell side deals, I could have a total of 20. Some of those are top of funnel. My dailies, the day-to-days that I'm working on, might be 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they spare, Gordon, the wonderful thing about the seat I sit in is that they span the gamut, like in terms of industries and spaces. And that is just I feel so fortunate to be able to see into so many different industries.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah, that is great. Our company Thryv makes a CRM for small businesses. We help small businesses really manage their client communication end to end, from the first appointment all the way through payments and reviews. And I'm curious, since you've seen so many of these exits, it's always been my thought that having a good system for managing your accounts, so you know who are my clients, who are my good clients, not so good clients, who's early, like you said, early in the process, late in the top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, spends a lot, doesn't, all that information, and have it in one system where potentially a buyer could basically boot up your computer and almost understand the whole business right there, not just from the financials, but who are the clients, and what's the history with those clients, who remodeled in '94 and is due for remodeling now, and who, whatever. Do you agree with that premise?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, you have a great product. Through my career, I've, spent, thousands of dollars on CRMs trying, and it's funny, Gordon, I was actually going to tell this story, a few moments ago. My first CRM was like this piece of paper that I created a template on.
Right.
And I remember one day looking at my, this pseudo notebook I made with these templates, and I'm like, there's got to be a better way.
Right.
And then I found, I found my first CRM, and you can't run a successful business without managing your customers or your clients. You leave so much money on the table. You can never remember it all. Sure, it takes some time to build it into your workflow, but after you do that, the growth is exponential. The success is exponential. I could just type in a few keywords in my CRM, and I could get 10 buyers who are looking for this very business that I now have.
Absolutely.
I have thousands of buyers in my database.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah.
No, we run into this all the time, but think of yourself even just as a consumer. Like, I have a guy who fixes, auto repair shop, auto body shop locally, and great guy, good at what he does, but does not have a real system in place. And if I would get an email or text from him every 4 months, or every 3 months, saying your quarterly fill in the blank, your oil change, checkup, license, whatever, is due, I would bring it in, but he never tells me. So it's just when I think I have a problem, which is less often than I probably should. Right. So, and you can say that for lawn care, you can say it for tree trimming, you can say it for dishwashers, almost anything. Just that regular, hey, it's time for the checkup, it's time for but you have to have the system in place to send the message so that you can get the appointment. Lots of times business owners impose their own self-beliefs or preferences onto their customers. And what you just brought up is a great example. It's like, I would agree too. If I got a text message from a service provider for something that I really cared about, I'd be like, thank you. You're not bothering me, Mr. or Mrs. Service Provider. You are actually making my job easier, so I'm more likely to be loyal to you. And I find that business owners, might be like, oh, I don't want to be another person hounding you or this, that. So they don't want that system, but they're thinking about their preferences, not the preferences of their customers. Yeah, so very, very much. And I don't know about if I'm normal this way, but it seems to me the companies that hound me are companies that somehow just got my email address and they send me basically spam that somehow gets through. And meanwhile, the companies that I'd like to hear from, which are often local businesses that I'm doing something with, mentioned some of them before, don't hound you. So the local where you'd say yes, you never hear from. And in fact, the purpose of what we do with this CRM is really to empower the local businesses in some ways to act like the bigger businesses, because the bigger businesses are all over how to manage their digital accounts. Local guys tend not to. So that's really the purpose. It's a way to really increase the velocity of the business. You say on your website, I'm a father first, avid outdoor recreationist, doing the typical Colorado activities such as hiking, mountain biking, snowboarding. And then you talk about your art background influences everything. How did you have time to do that with all the stuff you're doing? How did you find time for all this fun stuff you do?
It's some of this like sprinting mentality when you're starting a business, you're sprinting, and there aren't really a whole lot of fun moments.
Yeah.
If you're fortunate, you end up having employees, or you have coworkers that are into some of the same things you do, so you could kind of come up with a reason to go for a hike in the middle of the day. My down periods, again, this is just the way I have you run my professional career, is I'll do sprints, and then I'll do an exit, and then I'll take some time off. Nowadays, though, it's different because I've experienced those highs and lows, and I do not like those large deltas. I want to have a more balanced life. So nowadays, like, I'll take my daughter for an example. Like, my daddy-daughter time is impenetrable. You cannot get, and it's scheduled, and that is it. I will always have another deal. I will never have another daughter. And that's what I tell my clients, get your priorities straight. That email, that text message does not need to be sent right now. Be present with your family. So my daughter's taught me that. And I've been able to implement taking time off, creating boundaries, and they got to be real. They got to be real boundaries.
We're almost out of time, but I just want to ask you one more thing about this work-life balance, because you're at a stage of your career now where, you can say that email can wait. I got to have my daddy-daughter time. But for that first-time entrepreneur who's in the throes of building that business, and it's like all-consuming, it's pretty hard to get that. I mean, you can say those words, but the phone's ringing, the banker's on the other side, the client's mad, right? I mean, it's hard to break away, right? It's hard to, and you hear as a result, so many work, 12, 14, 16-hour days, day after day after day, right? How do you find that work-life balance if you're like the first-time entrepreneur, you're 26 years, how do you do that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's important to take a step back and realize that you can optimize your work when you recharge. So you think, let me work 12 hours, but those last 4 hours, how productive are you? So that's a real mind shift, because I think when you are, again, your first-time entrepreneur, you're just drinking from the fire hose. You're just trying to stay alive. You don't even know what you don't know. You're dealing, a lot of entrepreneurs deal with imposter syndrome. So they think the answer to that is to work harder. And it's like, no, wait, hold on. You've already made it. You're already doing it. You're all like, quote unquote, the rest of us entrepreneurs. Like, take your foot off the gas for just, a half hour for a minute, and start to think about it in terms of, okay, how efficient can I be? How am I prioritizing? And even acceptance. That's part of it too. It's going to be like, all right, I'm going to be accepting that I'm working 7 days a week. So I'm expanding my work week, but at the same time, I need to reward myself. I need to, the pressure's on. I need to go for a hike. Sometimes when you're in the pressure cooker and you take yourself out of it, it's true. Some of the best ideas come from that separation. And it's really difficult, Gordon. I sympathize a lot with entrepreneurs to really understand that not taking breaks is as, here, I'll tell you another short story about Apple. They pretty much almost demand that their executives take time off every 3 months. It's just not humanly possible. You don't have anything to prove. You only have your sanity to degrade.
Yeah, fine. Good stuff. Well, Joe, we're out of time. This has been great. Really learned a lot, and I'm sure people got a lot out of this episode. Where is the best place for people to find you and learn more about what you're doing and how you might be able to help them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my personal website's the best, or my email address, joe@joeperg.com. Reach out, say hello. If I can answer a quick email in a few moments, I definitely will. If someone wants to jump on a discovery call, I'm happy to do that too.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on our show. Great to have you here.
Yep. Thank you, Gordon. This has been great.
Yep. And thanks to our producer, Tim Alleman, our coordinators, DeEtte Barnett, and Daniel Huddleston. They do a great job. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please tell your colleagues, friends, and family to subscribe. And please leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate it. It helps us in the rankings. Until next time, make it a great week.